is up, Internet? It's your boy Brando and Christopher House. Welcome to another episode of the Otaku Remix. Another day 3,999 of quarantine anime. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing all right. Watching a surprising little amount of anime, actually, but it's because there's so little to talk about.
It's okay. It's okay. The season is waxing and waning, so we decided, in general, that's how we ended up on today's subject matter. The last thing that we were buzzing about today, obviously, as you read the thumbnail, good people online, we were talking about BEASTARS from Paro Itagaki on Netflix, the anthropomorphic romance comedy, social commentary.
It's a romantic. It's not a comedy. I would say it's like a romantic drama.
Yeah, that's a better term for it. It definitely has a.
Now I was buzzing about this. I'm the one who told you to watch this.
Yeah, you were watching.
I never actually got. Yeah, I never actually got your impression of it. Did you enjoy this show or?
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, it was funny how I watched it because like it was on Netflix, but I didn't know that because like you had always been kind of dogging me to watch it, and so I decided to just find some like dank internet off-brand website to watch the sub.
Wait, and, you didn't watch it on Netflix?
And then I didn't realize like by the time I had finished it, I like turned on my Netflix just for turning it on, and then I saw it like front page, it's like, and I was like, oh boy, that would have been way easier than like surfing the browser on my PlayStation 4 to watch like this anime. But that aside, it was a very enjoyable experience. Definitely thought-provoking. I think there's so many elements of this that was actually rather enjoyable. I'm not like a huge furry guy, but I thought the elements of using the animal's biological impulses to kind of go ahead and make social commentary, the different themes they go into, the animation quality is really good. A lot of the cinematography and blocking is pretty nice, and I've heard that the dub is also quite nice as well as far as the performances. So yeah, a lot to be desired when it comes to BEASTARS, honestly. So definitely big thumbs up from both of us, just to let you all know. But
okay, cool, yeah, because I recommended it, and like we were trying to get other people to watch it as well, and everybody was just like, ew.
We succeeded. There's a couple people in our circle, yeah. Not to name any names, but Jeremiah, Ward,
oh my god,
and a few other people.
Okay, cool. Well, no, and I hope this podcast like maybe promotes a few more people to watch it, because it really is more than the niche show it appears to be. It's not a show for furries. It's not a show just for like people who like romantic dramas. You know, it's a bit smart. It's not a bit. It's smarter than I think people give it credit for.
Absolutely.
And I think stands out compared to the amount of repetitive and derivative anime that come out every season.
Yeah, it's definitely, it sneaks you in with anime high school animals, and then it throws at you all these ideas of like racism, sexual violence, etc.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and it's you say it sneaks you in, but it's like, no, it scares you away with that shit.
Kind of, yeah.
It's like, oh god, it's animals and it's 3D and it's from Japan.
Yeah. You're like, oh my god, it's an abomination. For me, like in my friend circles, I'm like, oh, it's Trojan horsing, like the furry friends I have, into like something thought provoking. But I digress. All right, so premise and quick spoiler notice, as always, we're going to be discussing some of the elements of the plot in detail, so if you guys haven't watched it, be aware that is going to be in your face and in your ears for the next few minutes. But moving forward, all right, so our plot focuses on three main characters, mostly a young wolf attending a second year, I believe, at the high school. His name is Legoshi. He's kind of a to himself, quiet, not repressed, but he is definitely trying to keep his predator instincts at bay, his carnivore instincts at bay. That's something that's very prevalent in this world. As you kind of reminded me right before we started, that this world is kind of very much designed around the relationship between carnivores and herbivores. Just think Zootopia, but a little bit messier when it comes to the social structure. It focuses on his high school journey and his relationship with a young white bunny named Haru, which I think just means bunny in Japanese. I digress. But yeah, his relationship with her and his animal instincts, because their first encounter is one where he's violently allowing his biological nature to try and kill her. And I believe the story begins with a murder. Not this one, but
yes.
Not that this is a murder. And so he kind of fights the urge to discover in his own perception whether or not he wants to, if he's attracted to her or if he wants to, destroy her. And Haru's nature is definitely something to be explored as well. She's a young bunny that's kind of been ostracized at the school for being kind of for lack of a better term, hoe.
No, she's sexually promiscuous. Yeah, get it fucking right.
That's true. That's true. No kink shaming here on the promiscuous rabbits, because
it's not a kink.
It's funny because it's accurate. It's bunnies, they like to fuck. Anyway.
So it's clear why
Haru Itagaki, the mangaka behind this. But yeah, it follows mostly their relationship along with the character Lewis, who is the stand-up role model for the entire class, for the entire student body at this high school. He's like a deer, a buck. He is slated to become the next BEASTAR, which is a title for, I guess, like an outstanding citizen or student that will go on to kind of be prominent in society. Could you explain that better? Because I know that you had like that idea of what a BEASTAR is a little bit more.
I mean,
crystallized.
it's a bit of a nebulous concept that has a title, so it's a little hard to describe. But from what the show at least says, BEASTARs are individuals in society that have achieved like the highest level of like success. So they're usually like presidents of companies or like very famous actors or philanthropists or something like that. And they're usually supposed to be like the role models that the rest of society follows. I think the reason why the show is titled BEASTARS is because the entire premise is about how the society that they live in, which has this, like supposed kinship between carnivores and herbivores, is really all a ruse and all like kind of a lie. And how the symbolism of BEASTARs is like the ultimate lie for this society, because it's like they're supposed to be these incredible individuals that represent this society, and yet like all of them are carnivores.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like, the mayor's is a lie.
Every single one of them. Yeah. And so that's why Rui, who's the deer in this show, his goal to be a BEASTAR is like so notable because he would be the first carnivore BEASTAR. But I don't know. I think the interesting facet of the show is using Legoshi and Haru's relationship, which is like this really awkward one of a carnivore trying to be friends with a herbivore, despite their like personality differences and everything else, and how that reflects the bigger issues within that world society as a whole. Like throughout the show, we go into these dark avenues, like a black market where carnivores are able to eat meat and get a bunch of stuff that you're not supposed to be able to get in society, and it's just like widely accepted, more or less. It's this publicly known secret, if you would. And so it's just, that's what creates the interesting dynamics, is Haru's relationship with Legoshi, Legoshi's relationship with Lewis, and Lewis's relationship with Haru. They make a really interesting triangle, and not just from the drama of like, who likes who, but also like how will I guess a good example is Lewis and which I should be pronouncing Louis and Legoshi, because Legoshi is a carnivore that exhibits a lot of I would say how do I put it?
He kind of has hesitance, and like
he is hesitant, but it's like I'm trying to figure out the inverse of dominance.
Submissiveness.
He's very thank you. He's very submissive, and meanwhile Legoshi, Rui
okay.
is very dominant, and he's very aggressive in what he wants and what he needs. And in fact, he sort of despises Legoshi because he's this submissive carnivore, and he has so much envy for the biological difference between them. I know some people like they like to fantasize that it's like a kind of homosexual kind of thing, but I think I don't think it's that at all. I think it has really much more to do with just like a biological desire to be the other person.
Not to deny anyone's fan fiction, but that really isn't it. But it definitely is some sort of envy, and that's like you were saying, that what makes their relationship, the triangle between Haru, Legoshi, and Luis, so interesting. There's not only the character relationships, just like the normal drama, their narrative structure between the three of them, but also like the societal and biological circumstances that kind of make each of them envious or attracted or despise the other, and their dynamic definitely really defines the first, I would say, 2/3 of the story of the anime. Definitely the first like 8 or 9 episodes is really keyed in on that, plus a few other overarching stuff, but mostly them.
Yeah, I mean, the first 2/3 are establishing the society and the characters, and also like kind of exhibiting it in a play that's being performed by
it's all
the students.
In like a student play. That because like most of them, that
centers around it's a fictitious play. It doesn't actually exist, and it's about a character named Adler who's supposed to be like a symbol of death. But it's interesting because, again, it's like this role that normally a dominant carnivore would play, and it's being played by Louis, this dominant herbivore, and it really, like, right now when we're discussing it, we're kind of hitting the subject over the head. But in the show, I think it's really subtle, and I think that's what makes it really enjoyable to watch. Like, all the tension is seen through the characters' like facial animations and their moment to moment interactions, and meanwhile the whole time the audience gets to know like, oh well, I know that really Legoshi is feeling tepid about the situation because of what he did 2 days ago, whereas Rui becomes a mystery as to why he's this dominating force. It really kind of drives the interest throughout the plot, and that's what I think is so clever.
Yeah, no, this is a wonderfully written story. It's definitely something. It's again, Paru Itagaki, the mangaka, she's been at it for a while now. I think she started this manga in Weekly Shonen Champion in 2016, so it's definitely got some legs on it.
Wow.
I know, what is it, 2020? Yeah, 4 years still running. But yeah, no, it's incredibly well written in the way that it balances all these complexities within this sort of very unique world. And so, from a production side of it, just from the physical side, for anybody who would be interested in kind of just looking at it, like we said, it's not that, it is all 3D. It's done by Studio Orange. I think the only thing notable they've done previously is Land of the Lustrous.
They have a couple shows under their belt, but nothing that was really like notable.
Yeah. But overall, it's fantastic to look at. It's very fluid. It's rarely very stiff. I know many people are still under the PTSD of Berserk 2016, but it's honestly very good. Honestly, 3D animation over the last few years, as far as like in the format of an anime show, has been succeeding. A lot of shows typically use it just for intercuts, like Demon Slayer, Yowamushi Pedal, etc. Just to kind of cut budget here or there, or out of necessity with some. But it's been getting better. This is one of the probably, if not the best, I've seen so far. I know Vinland Saga uses it sparingly, and they do it fairly successfully. But yeah, no, it's a joy to watch. The cinematography, blocking, like the framing of every scene is very top notch. It's dramatic. It's very picturesque. I like it a lot, and yeah, it doesn't leave.
And I think one scene in particular that kind of stands out is a confrontation between Legoshi and Rui, where they're using a split camera to show like both characters' facial interaction as they're having a conversation between the two, and like it's so intense and it's so expressive, despite not much actual action going on. And it's like you don't really expect that from 3D animation. Like you expect it from 2D because like they're drawing the face anew every single time. Yeah. But here they're really like stretching these models to like express and act, and it works so well. Maybe in part because they're anthropomorphic. So like, you know, they don't need to have perfect human facial cues, and there's no like uncanny valley. Yeah. But yeah, it's just so impressive with what they're doing. Land of the Lustrous was also like very beautifully animated, so it shouldn't be a surprise. But you say that the 3D animation has gotten better. Meanwhile, the new Ghost in the Shell came out, and it's just like a trash fire.
I don't know, man. Like, okay, we've been looking at like those silly gifs where like a million backflips and shit, and like I have friends that are like, "Yo, check out the new Ghost in the Shell show or movie on Netflix," and I'm like, "Really?" So
yeah, it's because it's a legacy show. Yeah. People will suck its dick.
It's
no
definitely
what.
Captured some people, and it's so like bizarre. That's a whole conversation for another day. But yeah, as far as the 3D animation quality in that, it definitely looks it's riding the line.
The point I make bringing it up is that it's not easy. And it still has not been. It's not an art that's been figured out. Like modern anime has more or less been figured out. Things just kind of look homogenized. 3D has not, especially in Japan. And like Studio Orange seems to have figured it out.
Yeah.
Now watch me look it up and figure out that Studio Orange is not based in Japan or what fuck.
I would say definitely in most anime these days, the 3D entirely 3D anime has definitely been something that they're trying to carve out a niche for and carve out a template, because like it's not like the world doesn't know how to do successful 3D animation. It's just they usually need an excessive budget to get it to be as like crisp and sexy as most people would want. So like on a TV budget, how can you carve out that quality? And BEASTARS definitely succeeds. But yeah, gosh, what else is there something to talk about? I mean, there's so many things that are kind of buzzing through my mind in like inordinate orders. So is there anything specifically that you took away from this that you would say was what stuck with you the most about either the story or visually when it comes to BEASTARS? Like, what was the most memorable element of the entire affair?
To me, honestly, it's really the whole package. Like, there's no one particular standout character or standout
some
moment.
Of the parts.
It really is. Yeah, it's a chemistry situation where it's like you can take all the elements apart, but it just won't be the same without them together. Legoshi's like timid nature while trying to figure out who he is and how he should behave in this society that tells him to be one way when his body tells him to be another. Haru, who again similar, has developed a habit of sexual promiscuity, not for her own pleasure but for her own defense, like as a coping mechanism for a life she feels is like worthless. Is a fascinating tale in and of itself, and one that I don't think we would ever see from a male-oriented author. I feel like it's one that could only come from a female author, and it's great to really see that. And then Rui as well. His backstory doesn't really inspire the same amount of interest that the first two do, but it's nonetheless admirable, and it's nonetheless like a good reflection of the society as a whole, where he is trying so desperately to be this masculine figure, and to the point that I can't see him as anything but that. But it's only because he's trying so hard. Yeah. You know what I mean? He every step he takes, every word he says, everything he does is so meticulously planned in his head, and you just have to wonder, wow. Well, I mean, you see it by the end of the show. Actually, you see what happens when he isn't running on the script, when he isn't doing things by the books. And it's a scary sight. It's a really terrifying sight.
Yeah, the ending with Louis is I feel strange. Like I'm not exactly sure where it leads from here. Again, I haven't read the manga. I know that this covers these 12 episodes cover like 40 some chapters. But yeah, where Louis's story ends in this show is a cliffhanger.
It's a little over exaggerated.
And yeah, it is. Yeah. It's definitely. And it's
a little hyperbolic.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. I'm like, wow, that was his idea. But
at the same time, if you think about it, it only just made sense to me when I started describing his character as like so meticulously planned. Is that like once that cracks, like you don't know what that person can do, and like you kind of this show uses it as an excuse to make a somewhat off the hinge like psychopath. So I don't really know how true to life that might be, but for the most part, it's at least engaging and it's at least thought provoking.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's psychopathic, but he has like there is a lot of illusion and like expression, especially after his backstory is explained about how much repressed emotion he has regarding society, regarding carnivores specifically in relation to himself. Being like that sort of like.
Well, that's why I call him psychopathic, because he doesn't have any like connection to other people's emotions. He just knows like what he wants and what they want and how he can work around that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's willing to do anything to get it. Like he has no regard for people's emotions or feelings or concerns. It's like, no, you should behave this way because you are built this way.
He's a high functioning
and not
sociopath.
He's I would say so. And I think he's built that way more than anything, like, again, from his backstory. But, like, yeah, it's interesting. Because you normally, when you have a character like that, they don't come off as charming, or even, like, you don't understand how they function in society. But with Ri, you do. You understand how people like him and why people are attracted to him and his personality. But when you see that dark side, it's really dark and it's really scary. And yeah, so I think, as coming back to what your initial question was, I think really this is a show that I can't just pin down one thing that is the star element. It really works as a whole.
No, I agree. Yeah, the overall package, like we said, everything about it. I mean, it's got a banger intro. I really like Wild.
I was just about to say, yeah.
The intro is a lot of fun. The premise, the character designs, the presentation, everything about this is very, it's unique, it's top notch. At first, I was gonna when I started watching it, I believe I communicated to you that it was not as novel as it was basically playing itself up to be. But by the end, I was like, honestly, in really juxtaposed against everything else I've watched this year, there's rarely anything that has been as thought-provoking or interesting as BEASTARS, honestly, in 2020 thus far in anime, that I can think of off the top of my head. Anything that addresses...
I would go even farther than just 2020 anime. I would say very few shows, period.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely daring. To the things that the themes, the messages, about society and about like how those biological impulses, clash against the structure, the constructs, and all the ideas that Paru Itagaki gets to play with these characters is very impressive, and especially how naturally it's interwoven into like basically a high school drama. So very much hats off to her and to everybody who worked on the project. So definitely, I think from you and I, a big recommendation for anybody who hasn't, if that wasn't already apparent. So please go check it out. It's on Netflix. I would love to hear more thoughts about this. It's not a show I hear a lot of buzz from, outside of like, furry circles. So please, general anime public, do not be afraid. Is
guys,
basically the message.
Get over yourself. It's not, there are sexual elements in the show, but it's not like, I don't know. I didn't find any of the cast particularly attractive.
Look, so I know for some people...
Don't worry.
It's a double-edged sword. Some people want bunny titties. Other people don't want bunny titties. That's the line that they drew when they made this. So, but it's definitely worth the watch for those who aren't, into that kind of stuff. Anyway, so, any final thoughts?
I know we made this kind of short, and the only reason why is just because I think any more in-depth conversation would really need like a hard look at the show. But yeah, like give the show a watch. Let it just sit in you. No, it's not you have to understand, it's not an action show. It's not a harem show. It's not even your typical romance show. It is a show about like interesting characters. as they transition into a society that is kind of on the teetering point, like kind of at this point of like the illusions fading away. And maybe that's more relevant to us nowadays, where we're like in this new age of the internet exposing every lie ever. So, you know, we're kind of hitting that point ourselves, but I don't know. I think it was really well done, and I'm glad we could do this little podcast just to even give it the promotion of the 20 some odd people that watch it.
Yeah. And it's not like super wooden either. You know, it's like we were saying, like, you know, it deals with really wieldy ideas, and we love how thoughtful it can be within the context of its own story. But it definitely has some, you know, exciting elements that I think anybody would enjoy out of any story. There is some action if you are into that, but again, be aware it's probably only going to be in the last third of the story, where like Legoshi's storming the castle, etc., etc. But in general, fantastic watch. Definitely one of the more unique things series I've gotten to watch, that we've both gotten to watch over the past few months, if not ever. And yeah, kudos to everybody who worked on it. So please give it a look-see. We'd love to hear thoughts. So as always, shout them down below in the comments section. Let us know what your thoughts on BEASTARS are, you know, exactly. And if you had a good time, hit the like, hit the sub. Everybody out there, stay safe. Have a good day, have a good life. And from both of us, we'll see you all next time.